Oh joy, Tim Burton's going to adapt another existing property for the screen. How bad could this possibly go? So as not to bury the lead, Dumbo's actually pretty decent. It's not an exact remake in the sense that, for instance, Beauty and the Beast was. It's actually more kind of its own thing. As in, yes, it tells the iconic story more or less to the same structure as you remember, but in the same way that Cinderella seemed like a different story just by giving Prince Charming a personality, Dumbo kind of manages the same by keeping the animals mute and giving the tertiary human character something close to actual involvement. The end result's about in line with wherever you've already landed on the concept of, Dumbo but with the big fish guy. And while I personally have been more than a little bit jaded on Tim Burton for at least a decade now, I actually think Dumbo's got more than enough charm and likability to ultimately win out. It's pretty subtle for a Burton flick, actually. There's less emphasis on the, creepy for the sake of creepy nonsense, and there's a pretty solid use of applying Burton's sensibilities to something actually more broad and archetypically Disney than you'd expect. So the broad strokes remain the same. Dumbo's a baby circus elephant born with big ears and the sort of unrefined ability to fly, but here there's the application of two young children of the circus who enable him to learn to master his sort of gravity-defying act and cheer him on along the way. One of those kids is Tandy Newton's daughter, by the way, Nico Parker. The other's Finley Hobbins. I'm not familiar with his parents. On screen, though, their estranged and now one-armed father, who's Colin Farrell, returns from the war to rejoin the circus as a trainer, but times are hard and the circus needs a big act to pull in the punters, and, this is not Chekhov, you kind of know how this plays. So, live-action Dumbo for 2019, how'd they do? Actually, pretty gosh darn fine. Not amazing, not awful, but pretty firmly fine. It's quite an engaging enough, if a bit drippier, family drama. The script reads like entire sections have simply been cut for time, and, well, the overreaching shadow left behind by The Greatest Showman goes some way towards explaining why it's got a weirdly sapped-out colour palette given the material. But when all's said and done, it's engaging and it's charming enough a time at the movies that, while it doesn't reach the sort of triumphant peaks of Beauty and the Beast or The Jungle Book, at least isn't as insufferable as like Maleficent or as dull as Pete's Dragon. It's like Cinderella good. Remember Ken Branagh's Cinderella? It's about that good. On the casting side, Colin Farrell's bringing that drippiness hard in the dependable enough but unremarkable way he usually does. There's some fun to be had with Danny DeVito as the sleazy circus ringleader, though admittedly never anywhere near enough fun as the movie itself seems to think there is. And Michael Keaton might be getting his Batman Penguin reunion, but what he's not got is much opportunity to do anything besides mug for the camera in this one. In fact, he feels a lot like stunt casting, which, to be fair, Tim Burton movie. And the kids will go along with the broad arch-villain shtick anyway. Meanwhile, Ava Green's engaging in a pretty underwritten role. They seem to flip-flop at one point early on about where her character seems to sit on the whole evil spectrum, but they earn genuine points from me for not saddling her with some god-awful love interest replacement mom figure slot at any rate. And the kids are pretty endearing, even though the movie builds this entire character arc around Nico Parker and then either forgot to script and shoot any kind of resolution to it, or, did and decided not to bother including in it. They're both very good, though. They share a sort of tender chemistry with the CG animated Dumbo, and they do pull off some quite nuanced moments between them. Speaking of Dumbo himself, yeah, that absolutely works. The design of the characters are at once both completely believable and cute as all hell. He has real weight and tangibility. You never once particularly feel like you're watching an artificial creation so much as just the iconic character simply brought to life. And in that grand old Superman way, you'll believe an elephant can fly. And those sequences are great. They're powered by the sort of requisitely gleeful and gothically tinged score by, Tim Burton movie. And cinematographer Ben Davis, he does a marvelous job, even if it is a strangely colourless film. Now, maybe that's a way to help differentiate it a bit from Greatest Showman, besides the big honkin' flying elephant. But it does take something away from a film you'd like to be as spellbinding as an actual trip to the circus should be. Dumbo takes off, but never really properly soars. It feels quite choppy at times, as if certain ideas just haven't been fully thought out, and Burton's aesthetic, once you've stripped the colour away and dialed the man himself back a bit, comes off as almost ironically Quentin Blake inspired, but a dialed down Burton can't really add much in the way of distinction to this one. Like, nobody's necessarily going to be reaching for this one on the DVD shelf the next time the kids want a Disney rewatch. Because for one thing, it's not got any of those great big iconic hook moments like Beauty and the Beast and Jungle Book had. Also, if you're wondering, yeah, the non-speaking animals thing means no racist crows in this version. And go ask Tony Stark how the Disney characters getting drunk thing factors into the only other bit you'll want to know about. And no, they didn't include that either. I really dug it though, I thought it was really sweet, and I swear to God, I'd kill for that elephant, he's a lovable little dude. So scratch another off the Disney live-action remake list. I mean, Aladdin's next, Lion King to follow, Lady and the Tramp, and Mulan after that. Frankly, if they all sat next to this on the quality spectrum, I'd be fine with that. I mean, I'd rather they were out-and-out wins like Bill Condon and Jon Favreau managed. But Dumbo's a solid ride that just shakes a little on the track, and that's fine. 3 stars from me, because, well, it is quite endearing, and, well, now let's get Peter Berg to adapt The Rescuers. Yeah, it's actually kind of funny to go from a live-action Disney adaptation to a documentary about Frank Sidebottom, given how intrinsic a part animation played in, well, you know, all of his antics, but, you know, can't be helped. Being frank, the Chris Seavey story arrives in cinemas this week, and I gotta be honest, was not expecting much from this one. I'm not a Frank Sidebottom guy, that whole thing more or less bypassed me growing up. I saw the Donald Gleason movie and thought it was okay, I guess, but otherwise not really for me. This doc though, god damn this was heart-wrenching. It's directed by Steve Sullivan, and it's comprised of both unparalleled access to the archive and works of Chris Seavey, and interviews with those who knew him both, you know, in the industry and at home. On the one hand, it's an inspiring story about a man who embraced what we now refer to as a portfolio career, you know, ahead of his time, and found a niche that put him in homes across the country. And on the other hand, it's a tragic portrait of a man struggling to find a way just to express himself artistically. Now, I didn't know a lot of what's in here, and it had me laughing, crying, whooping, cheering, the full works. There are some insane insights into Seavey's mind, and just, you know, some of the amusing things he'd cook up here and there, and a crop of interviewees who really don't hold back in their verbal portraits of him, and the whole thing looks bonkers thanks to the visual stylings of the man otherwise known as Frank Sidebottom. If you're a fan, it's unmissable, but if you're not, like I'm generally not, there's still way more than enough here to hook you and drag you in. It's a fascinating story, really well told. It's perhaps not the most theatrical of documentary experiences. Could see this playing just as well on film 4 in a couple months, for instance. But it's one you should definitely peep regardless of on what format. 3 stars, this really won me over. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.